Welcome everyone. So here's another video from my series of what Google knows about economics. So I wanted to see what it would say about microeconomics versus macroeconomics. The starting point is officially microeconomics is the study of single product markets or decisions made by individuals or individual firms at the household level or whatever, right? Macroeconomics is thinking about the economy as a whole. So we're thinking the primary model we'd use in microeconomics would be the supply and demand model. And when we're using supply and demand, the variables for the supply and demand model are the price and then the quantity of that specific good or service. For macroeconomics, the primary model is the aggregate demand, aggregate supply model. The primary variables are going to be the price level, which is going to be a measure. It's going to be a price index of the average prices in the economy. And so typically it's like consumer price index or GDP deflator or producer price index or something like that. And the quantity variable is going to be real GDP, which is a measure of the final the market value of all final goods and services produced in the economy in a specified time period. So here's what it says. Little picture in microeconomics is concerned by how supply and demand interact with individual markets for goods and services. That's not bad, other than I wouldn't call it little picture. Little picture. That's weird. In macroeconomics, the subject is typically a nation, how all markets interact to generate big phenomena economists call aggregate variables. Yikes. Yeah, I mean, typically we think of the subject being an economy at least, usually maybe a country, a nation. Think about how all markets interact to generate big. I mean, yeah, so we're thinking about all the markets in aggregate. So that's not horrible, but that's not a great, I don't know, that's not a great definition. Maybe that's just what Google's scraping off of that website. What are three differences between microeconomics and macroeconomics? I mean, so I've given a whole bunch. I mean, the key thing is really just the focus. So the microeconomics models are focused on a single product market or single service market or decisions of individuals or firms or whatever. Macroeconomics is looking at the economy level. Let's see what it says. It deals with things like demand, supply, factor pricing, product pricing, economic welfare, production, consumption. Yep, those are all good topics. Macroeconomics deals with various issues like national income distribution, employment, general price level applied to internal issues. That's wild. I don't know what internal issues is corresponding to. I also this says what are three differences between microeconomics and macroeconomics? I guess like pick from this list because there's more than three, but whatever. So should I study macroeconomics or microeconomics? Is microeconomics or macroeconomics easier in college? So it actually kind of depends. So we typically find that microeconomics is going to be more applicable to everyday life and to your experience as a consumer. However, we get a lot more information about macroeconomics just from going about the real world, because when people talk about the economy or inflation or unemployment, that's typically done through a macroeconomics perspective. So you pick up a lot more macroeconomics from the world around us, although you pick up more microeconomics from your own experience. And then depending on whichever one your mind is more in tune to, kind of depends on whichever is easier. Also, different schools will vary in terms of which course comes first. So it's important to build your foundation thinking about kind of economic logic. In some cases, microeconomics, it's more natural for microeconomics to be taught first, because very often in a typical macroeconomics course, you'd start maybe the first exam even covering just things up to the supply and demand model from microeconomics. Other times you might see macroeconomics first, and then you'd see, they'd introduce up to the supply and demand model, then you'd go into a whole bunch of macro topics, then the next semester you'd come back and do microeconomics a lot more carefully. And so sometimes that can be good too. Kind of depends on your school. In a lot of cases, I think microeconomics is more intuitive, but also like that's sort of my training and my experience. My PhD is in microeconomics topics. Specifically, I studied behavioral economics, game theory, applied theory. And so, I like microeconomics a lot more than macroeconomics, although I enjoy teaching macroeconomics given the chance. Should I study macroeconomics or microeconomics? You really should study both, right? You won't get a full view of economics until you've taken both. So I think both are important. Let's see what it'll say. Which is easier? Microeconomics requires knowledge of calculus, which some students say is more difficult than macroeconomics. Students must earn a score of 3 to pass. So some require a 4 or 5. So this must be talking about, this is specific to the AP test, is what the score of 3 or 4 or 5 is doing. Microeconomics at the principles level doesn't require calculus. At the intermediate level, you kind of need calculus for both, depending on how they would teach the intermediate macroeconomics course. Although microeconomics would rely more on calculus. At the principles level, though, calculus isn't a factor. So you just need basically college algebra. Okay, so should I study macroeconomics or microeconomics? I say you should study microeconomics. Both, I actually said they're both important. Both should be taken early on. Many students prefer microeconomics. It's more applicable to their daily lives. Yeah, so the concepts are easier to grasp. That's exactly what I said. Okay, very good. What is microeconomics examples? So you might be interested in fluctuations in the price of gasoline or something, right? So if there's an increase in the number of buyers of gasoline, so we get expansion, economic growth in China was the increase in gas prices during about 20 years ago, the early 2000s, was attributed to economic growth in China that created a lot more buyers of gasoline. So then price rose. So that'd be a microeconomics example. Let's see what it says here. First-time home buyers shopping for the best loan interest rates and individuals choosing to purchase one product over another. This is great. Study.com. Thanks a lot. Yeah, so in the Principles of Economics course, the best example of microeconomics is not first-time home buyers shopping for best loan interest rates. Firstly, best loan interest rates at best is going to be macroeconomics. At worst is going to be finance. And then also, first-time home buyers is probably most principles level economics students are not themselves at the moment first-time home buyers, though hopefully will be once they graduate with their degree shortly. So, does microeconomics involve math? Yeah, as much as necessary, but as little as possible is how I teach it. So what does it say? Many academic courses in microeconomics use mathematics to inform about social behavior in a quantitative. That's just a horrible way to say this. Investopedia, I tell you. Why? Think of like how. I don't know. So this is just a really awkward way to explain what they're trying to say. I don't know. So does macroeconomics involve calculus? It's going to say frequently uses yeah, and this is specific to Cornell, right? So let's see. Yeah, so you need calculus for core microeconomics, core macroeconomics. I would imagine when they're talking about core microeconomics and core macroeconomics, they're referring to what gets used in their major. So it'd probably be the intermediate level version like I was mentioning. Is macroeconomics easy to self-study? I mean, in general, I think self-study is a good idea. I would always prepare for my most difficult classes during the summer before I would take them. So what's it going to say? Lucky for you, AP Macro is one of the easier self-study. Cool. Okay, very good. Let's see. So there's something else that I saw. Oh, can I study economics if I'm bad at math? Can I study economics if I'm bad at math? Yes, you can. And you can get better at math by studying economics, because what you'll do is you want to think not about formulas. You want to think about the economic concept and then see how the math is getting used. And then you can use that to build up some confidence and then experience working with math. And so yeah, you can study and it can make you better at math. Economics uses a good deal of math. In college and university, you need to become comfortable with at least basic calculus statistics. If you want to go to graduate school in economics, you more or less need a minor in math. Yeah, that's right. So like if you wanted to do my undergrad major was math. I did not study economics as an undergrad. I did not study economics until I had a master's degree in something else, right? So yeah, if you wanted to major in economics, you'd have to take up through calculus, but you could take a principles level economics class, and really college algebra would be sufficient preparation. And depending on how it's taught, you might not even need that, because you wouldn't necessarily be using equations depending on how the course was structured. Anyway, hopefully that's useful. I'll go ahead and conclude here. See you in the next video.